ZBiotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL at checkout for 15% off your offer. Guys, we have spent a ton of time talking about off-field drama and a lot of things surrounding the Browns that don't involve the actual product we've seen. And the reality is, as of today, the Browns are 1-6. They have a top 2 draft pick, or would have a top 2 draft pick.
No, they have number 1 pick.
That's a top 2 draft pick, yes.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yes.
I don't know why wouldn't you just say the number 1.
I mean, I guess you're right. And they are arguably one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in football. Have we given the Browns a pass, or have the Browns gotten a collective pass for how bad they've actually been on the field this year because of all the chaos that's happened with the stadium and the injury and the reaction and all the above? They gotten a pass for how bad they've actually been this year?
I think in the last week they have, because we've been talking about so many other things. We've been talking about Watson getting hurt. We've been talking about the fans' response to Watson getting hurt. We've been talking about who's going to start at quarterback. We've been talking about the play calling. So it's kind of gotten lost. But yes, the player, fans often want to blame the coaches because it's easier to change, or the GM, because it's easier to change the coach or the GM than it is the players. Mm-hmm. But the truth is the players, for the most part on this team, are playing like crap. And you want to give some blame to the coaches, fine. But, guys, we thought this was one of the most talented teams in the league, and that the biggest question mark was the quarterback.
Did we get it wrong? Obviously, we got it wrong.
Yeah, but I think we overrated some of the talent.
Was it because of the narrative? Like, everyone just said, oh, they've got a great roster. So it's because someone said it, and then we looked at it, and we're like, oh, they've been good. They got the coach of the year.
Yeah.
They played. Watson's healthy this year. They should be great.
I think part of it was last year they had a great season, even with terrible quarterback play. So the assumption was easy.
Terrible. I mean, he was
terrible overall.
5 different guys playing.
Joe Flacco was pretty good.
He still threw a lot of picks. Watson, they are. You want to say below average quarterback play?
Mediocre.
Nah, I think that's too positive.
How about just average?
I think that's too positive. You guys are getting crazy over here. You forgot it was bad. Bad. Philip Walker playing.
What was his record?
P.J. Walker. Was his name Philip?
No, he calls him Philip.
Philip John?
Yeah.
What was his record again?
I don't care what his record. He has 500. He has a better record as quarterback of the Browns than Baker Mayfield or Deshaun Watson. That is a fact.
Percentage?
Yeah, percentage-wise, he has a better record.
Man.
And so we were like, wow, this team, I think we convinced ourselves that this team was uber talented. And what happened was maybe they just overachieved last year, which happens sometimes. And now you look at, I think the 2 biggest problems on offense were Amari Cooper did not look like a Pro Bowl caliber player anymore, and now he's gone. And the offensive line got old quick.
Yes.
Right? The offensive line has been a major strength of this team for a number of years, and now it's a massive weakness. But in terms of defense, what do we think? Did they overachieve last year, or are they underachieving this year? I mean, you guys played defense. What do you got?
First of all,
yeah,
they ain't got a pass from me all year. Everybody's been all.
No, I'm not saying they got a pass all year.
I'm answering the question that's on the screen.
Yeah, go ahead.
They ain't got, the defense has not got a pass from me all year. Like, I've been on them.
Yeah.
Everybody's been talking about the offense, and that's rightfully so.
Yeah.
The defense, to me, had no excuse. No excuse at all. I know they had a couple of injuries here and there. I know Jordan Hicks was hurt. I know Denzel's in and out of the lineup. But for the most part, y'all was pretty solid. Y'all still had some good pieces in there that could get the job done. And up until last week was the first time that I was like, okay.
Yeah, they played well.
They look pretty.
They see that Bengals uniform. They play well.
Yeah, you can see next what they did last year there's still a little bit there. Now, granted, a lot of guys got healthy this week too. Juan Thornhill came back. Denzel played the snaps. Blah blah blah. As far as the offense goes, the line to me, everything begins and ends with the line. I mean, if you don't got the protection, it was so hard at times for me to judge Deshaun because some plays I would look and be like, well, heck, if Patty Mahomes was the quarterback back there, he'd get swallowed up too. Like, he ain't got time. But then it was times where they actually looked good and Deshaun would throw the ball to the dirt or he'd misfire. Then it was time the receivers dropped. So it was just like that whole offense, like, and I knew it, but I kind of didn't want to believe it. The fact that when you put in a new offense, it usually takes time for it to just click. Like, it takes a while for that chemistry to come, for guys to gel. And the problem is when you're hurting all these things, it never materialized. And then you looked at it and you tried to go back to the old stuff, but then that still didn't look good. And then you got a running back that's coming back off of an injury, and you hope you praying that he get back to 100%, and it's going to take him some time. So, like, for me, the whole thing was kind of like, first of all, I don't know why you changed what was working anyways. That's the first part. Why did you even change the offense to begin with? I know why. I know the answer why, but, like, stop. Like, do what you know works. What works best for you is this. Make him be in this system, because everybody is – 10 other guys are used to this system, not this new one. So I'm not going to change it for one. If 10 guys couldn't figure it out, then I would change it. But if one guy's the only difference, like, I don't feel like I want to change it for that. So that to me was the biggest issue to why we looked terrible on offense to begin with. And like I say, and the special teams, I don't even want to talk about that.
Oh, my God.
You need a kicker.
I don't even want to talk about it.
It just pays
Except Corey Bojorquez is still one of the best Browns players we have.
Oh, yeah. Never draft a kicker, never pay a kicker.
Not in Cleveland.
Special teams lost their mind.
Dustin, do you think as a collective the Browns have gotten a pass this season? Or do you think they've been fairly criticized for a 1-6 start?
I think that they've gotten a pass to some degree because of all the circumstances. I mean, no one wants to believe that Deshaun Watson's a bust, because we understand that all the eggs are in that basket, and that's a difficult pill to swallow for fans. So there's probably still people out there that are looking at this thing, well, it's only this case because we've had injuries. You know, Nick Chubb just came back. You know, they've had some issues with Deshaun, and now, you know, he's out for the season. What are we going to do? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of excuses that have been made. The Bill Callahan excuse has been made. The offensive line with the injuries has been made. Not having Nick Chubb, that's been made. Amari Cooper's not happy here. That's been made. So he traded. Like, there's so many things have happened. I just wish Alex Van Pelt was here and you gave him the play calling last year.
Yeah, it made no sense, as you alluded to, Tyvis, and you just said, Dustin, it made no sense to blow up the entire offensive staff. The offensive staff had overachieved with a group last year with all those different quarterbacks without Nick Chubb. And they weren't a great offensive team, but they were adequate considering what they were dealing with on that side of the ball. I mean, their offensive line was beat up last year. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you know, they deserve a ton of criticism, and the players deserve a ton of criticism. But so does Andrew Berry. I mean, he hasn't done a good enough job. I think we thought he did, but he hasn't done a good enough job putting this team together. And you look at the skill positions on offense, it doesn't look very good.
And Adam, I mean, every single position area of football in this team is going to be scrutinized even more now because of the lack of productivity from the quarterback position.
Yeah.
Deshaun has made every single area magnified. Every weakness on this team is now exploited. Any team that has a good quarterback can sort of get away with a little bit more. The quarterback's an eraser, right? You can get more room for error, right? Yeah, and the Browns have absolutely zero room for error here when it comes to just winning games. Forget the playoffs.
Right. Getting back to just one other thing, kind of unrelated to this specifically, but we were talking about quarterback play before and how it's kind of down a little bit, right, the last couple of years. And you guys talked about how these quarterbacks are changing teams and they don't know the system and they're not able to read defenses like they used to. But you know what I think is a contributing factor to quarterback play being down also? Is that I think we've reached a tipping point where defensive linemen are so much more better athletes than the offensive linemen that defensive linemen are dominating almost too much.
Well, and you got to remember, too, so many teams now rotate like 13 guys on the defensive line. So those guys are always fresh.
Yeah.
And so every offensive lineman, they're out there busting their tail the whole game. Well, they got to face like guys coming fresh off the bench every single other snap, you know?
I wonder if we're seeing
that many different guys. It's kind
Yeah.
of like a bullpen game in baseball. You're facing a different guy,
Right.
a different pass rush move. You don't know what to expect.
That's true. Meanwhile, the offensive lineman, there's no rotation.
Right.
Guys play every play.
Exactly.
Sound like a corner to me.
Yeah, I wonder.
I
if-
also have an idea on that real quick, and I'm
Yeah.
curious with 2 DBs. You don't mind me throwing it out there real quick?
Yeah, but Mike, before you do, I would love at some point if we could find out, like our pressures way up. Have pressures been going up the last few years in the NFL?
I
bet
bet
they
you I
have.
could look that up.
Text
so
your buddy
give me.
TA.
Let me
Yeah.
throw this out, and then I'll try to look
Go
it up.
ahead.
If not, we'll ask Cleve because he could probably dig into deeper information. I think part of the reason quarterback play as a whole may be down too is you're seeing way more nickel and dime package, so you're getting less chance to attack 3 linebackers. And also, these defensive backs now are otherworldly athletes. And credit to you two for playing the position. To the point where simple throws that used to be available just don't seem to be available anymore. And I think part of that is because linebackers are now smaller and faster, so you know those guys are half safeties. They're more hybrids than they are like the old thumpers, Patrick Willis, Ray Lewis style. And they're just not the underneath dink and dunks that you can get, but not to the same capacity. So I think it's a combination of defensive linemen being better, offensive line play, to the same reason you talk about the quarterbacks, offensive line play the last couple of years. The guys coming out of college have not been of the same caliber. And defensive backs are just better in general. They're playing nickel and dime way more frequently than they ever have in the past.
At the end of the day, the Browns' reason for not having success on Sundays is because they decided to go away from the identity they had since the beginning of time. They have always been a run-first team that runs play action and passes off of the run game. You force those guys to play 3 linebackers, and then you throw the ball outside of that. That's just what this team has been, and you try to switch that entire identity in one off season.
Right.
And of course,
Well, it's not one off season. I mean, you've had Deshaun Watson for 3 years. I know they would change the style of offense, but when you trade for Deshaun Watson, you don't do that to be a run-first team.
Why not?
And why necessarily?
Why not?
But because what's the point of trading for a quarterback you think is an elite quarterback to be a run-first team?
Listen, I think, that's the problem.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest problem right there. The problem to me is you've been in a lot of games. Even when you had Baker, you was in games. You had an AFC championship, or not AFC championship. You had an AFC game against Kansas City. The problem was you paid that quarterback that money because for that moment right there, when we get in those situations, late game, need to come back, got to have it at the end of a game, he can make those plays. Up until then, what you was doing was fine. You just needed it for that moment right there.
Right,
that's what separates the quarterbacks to me nowadays. It's not the ones that go out there and throw for 7,000 yards. It's the ones that puts together game-winning drives that gives us the chance at the end of a game to win the game. Can he do that?
Which
That's
Watson
the question.
could not.
No,
And
since
Baker
he
could not,
been
honestly.
no, he has not.
No, he cannot at all. I mean, no. It's pretty simple. I mean, he's not
All right,
capable.
that's
So
my point exactly.
yeah, and I mean, I don't think just because the Browns have been a running team forever that they can't win being a pass-first team. And let's face it, the reality is,
Well, you better make sure you switch your whole personnel
that's true.
because
Yeah,
your personnel right now is run first.
well, I mean, that should have been something they'd been doing over the last 3 years when they traded for Deshaun Watson.
I
And now,
don't disagree with you.
And now they're going to go back to running the ball a lot more because they don't have, they're going with Jameis Winston at quarterback, and they have Nick Chubb back. And the hope is that as Nick Chubb plays a few games, that he'll get back to being who he was. I mean, I don't know if that's ever going to happen, let alone this year. We don't know. I mean, what did you think? You haven't been on this week. What did you think of Nick Chubb? I mean, he didn't look like the same. It's hard to tell.
He was what I thought he would be. I mean, a little rusty, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't have expectations, I don't know if you guys did, for him to come into the game and just kind of tear it up. I didn't think that was fair to have those expectations. He got in the end zone.
He did, twice. The one was called back.
Yeah, so I think that's good. It makes fantasy owners happy.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
Yeah.
All right, Bull, I did real quick research
sucked.
for you.
It
I'm
was
not sure
terrible.
this is perfect,
Yeah.
but I looked at the max number of pressures according to PFF
Yeah.
every year since 2023.
Yeah.
So it's just one player. This is the most in the league. Last year, Aiden Hutchinson had 103 total pressures. and that includes hurries, hits, sacks, 103 total pressures. T.J. Watt was second with 84. Myles Garrett was sixth with 79. So near the top.
Right.
That's by far the most of any year of an individual pressure.
Yeah, I mean.
Max Crosby in 2021 had 101, but outside of that, the leading number of pressures in almost every other year is somewhere in the 80s.
And I bet you the pace is even higher this year. I think.
Well, we can do the pace right now. You
Yeah.
ready for the math? Total pressures through 7 weeks. Hutchinson leads with 35.
Yeah, but he hasn't played 7. He didn't play 7 games. He didn't play last
He
week.
only played 5 games.
He's only played right. So that's 7 a game, which is 70, which is 105, which is 112. So he would be on pace for 112.
On pace to break the record.
Now, part of the reason those numbers are up is because they play 17 games now.
And they
so
pass more now too. So it's also
right. But now I would bet this year it's trending a little more towards run than pass than it's been in the last couple of years.
fair enough. And I go back just to picking random years, like 2014, for example, just 10 years ago. Justin Houston led the league with 77 total pressures.
Right.
So almost a 30 pressure drop off, and it's one fewer game, which does play a difference. But you're not having 30. You're not having 30 pressures in a game. So I do think there's some credence to.
Yeah, I think and Dustin pointed out they rotate so many guys now. Like they've always rotated guys, but now it's more than ever. You're keeping guys real fresh on the defensive line, and you're
because
throwing
what they're doing is they're keeping their best players fresh for third down.
Right.
So like the first and second down stuff, they can rotate guys through, and then third and 8. Well, you got Myles Garrett who just had a blow and just got a nice sip of Gatorade coming in and teeing off. Like
right.
That's
and he's
tough.
going up against the tackle who's played more and is not close to the athlete that Myles Garrett is. It's
sometimes
tough.
those guys are out there for 8, 9, 10 play drives,
Yeah.
and the defensive players have been out there, 3 plays here, 2 plays there,
Right.
In and out.
Sound like a corner to me.
Why do you keep saying that? What do you mean it sounds like a corner to you?
Because we go through the same thing.
With what, rotation?
Yeah.
I never did. What are you talking about?
I'm talking about wide receivers.
Oh, going against receivers?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You go out there, road there, put whoever, run him off. Next play, put your best guy in there. Like, let's go.
Are you whining that cornerbacks are not getting the credit that offensive linemen are for having?
Everybody knows it's the hardest position to play in football.
It's for sure the hardest position to play. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Well, we'll see what Bernie thinks about that.
Who are the best athletes on the field?